Welcome back to the Uneducated Philosopher. Um, Today, I think I'm gonna revisit Israel and the situation in Gaza. Um, it's not gonna be like last time, or when I did the video about my response to Thane Rosenbaum. There, I got a little heated and I was swearing and going off like a maniac, and I decided that when you get upset, your intelligence kind of dumbs down a little bit, and there was a lot of points that I left out because I got so heated by the stupid things that Thane Rosenbaum was saying. And I got another article here by a Canadian reporter out in Calgary, which is even worse, but I'm not going to get upset about it. I'm just going to explain the points. Um, so about yesterday at 8 o'clock in the morning or something like that, they had a 72-hour ceasefire. It lasted about an hour and a half. Of course, Israel blames Palestine or Hamas or whatever. Hamas blames Israel, and it's always going to go back and forth like that. And one can never truly know unless you're actually right there or we can get some actual live footage. And it kills me, from the aspect of the Israeli side. It makes me laugh because they have like the technology to put, like, a lot of their soldiers have like those little, like how the American soldiers do, they have those little cameras on their helmets and stuff like that. I mean, yet, you know they just don't happen to have the critical footage that they need to prove that it was like, oh no, they attacked us first. But, having said that, it doesn't matter. I mean, you can't really say unless you're there. Um, one side's always going to blame the other. No, it wasn't our fault, it's their fault, or whatever. So, obviously Hamas is not perfect. They do, I mean, they're not officially a terrorist organization like Israel says they are. They are actually an elected party, but they have done terrorist acts, and I won't argue that it's true. I don't think they've done not nearly as many terrorist acts as Israel has. And when it comes to the subject of terrorism, I'm always a little skeptical because it's like, what is terrorism anyways? I mean, it seems to me, especially these days, that it's like there's one side, there's another side, and the side that we agree with is the army, and the side that we don't agree with, they're the terrorists. There's no opposition anymore. They're terrorists. And I mean, I can give you a good example. When the Nazis were having problems with the Nazis referred to the partisan as terrorists. And, when they decided to fight the terrorists with objective force without exhausting any other options, they just went right to force. It was wrong then, just as it is for Israel now. It's wrong for them now. So, I mean, that's something to think about. So, yeah, I reacted to, it seems to me that, in this part of the world, we keep picking up all of our, like, our media literature, and it seems that, like human rights groups and stuff like that, they see what's going on, and even United Nations is coming around, and they're saying like, okay, the killing's got to stop, and they're starting to be more sympathetic towards Hamas and stuff. But when you actually look at our actual media, like the right wing media, like the corporate sector, like what's actually controlling our country, like our propaganda, it's still very much like support Israel. Like Stephen Harper this morning, right away, I mean, without even knowing one shred of information whatsoever. I don't think it mattered. As soon as he heard ceasefire, that the ceasefire didn't happen, he was just like, it's Hamas's fault. They're terrorists, terrorist organization. We support Israel all the way. Hamas has got to do an unconditional surrender. Just lay down their arms. I don't care what the terms are. You know, like, he basically doesn't care how bad they got to take it up the ass. It doesn't matter. They're terrorists and they got to lay down everything. And I don't care who you are or who you're dealing with. If you don't want to give, like, when you're fighting somebody that's willing to lay down their life and do whatever it takes, and you give them nothing, then they're not going to give up, are they? You know what I mean? Or nothing's ever going to get better. So if you don't give them one shred of humanity, then, you know, I don't see how it's ever going to work. But it's, you know, it's, I was going to say it's hilarious, but really it's sad on how we are looking at things, like, through our propagandized media. A few days ago, Tuesday, July 29th, there was a reporter, Ezra Levant. Now, you know, I've noticed too that a lot of these reporters that are, like, so hardcore, you know, Hamas is terrorists, support Israel, blah blah, you know, I noticed a lot of them, they're Jewish, you know, like, and it's like nobody stops and says, okay, well, why is all of our newspapers filled with all these Jewish reporters just damning the snot out of Palestinians? You know, like, no one ever sits there and stops and thinks, like, what the hell is going on here? This is like some Orwell shit going on, you know? So, anyways, my subject of today is, like, because, you know, everyone keeps saying Israel must defend itself. So, my subject of the day is do you really believe that Israel is actually defending itself? Is it really defending itself, or is it saying we're defending ourselves, but really there's another objective? Whether they want to get rid of the Gaza Strip or exterminate all Palestinians or whatever it is. Any objective besides we're defending ourselves. Which really doesn't make sense. Because, I mean, defending yourselves against what? You know, rockets being flung over? I mean, really, there was a ceasefire before, and I don't care what people say. When you look at the actual facts, when you go to, like, the Israeli website, the last ceasefire that actually lasted, like, about a year or two, like a quite significant amount of time, it wasn't broken by Hamas. It was actually broken by Israeli soldiers. And that's the truth. And, you know, tensions were rising because the borders weren't being opened up, and they're not getting access to construction supplies and stuff like that I'm going to go into a little bit later. So basically, Ezra Levant, you know, he works for the biggest newspaper in Canada, The Sun, you know, so he's got his own column, The Sun News here, and Israel must defend itself. Serious question. If Hamas terrorists in Gaza were to build Auschwitz-style ovens to burn Jews like the Nazis did, would the world still demand that Israel stop attacking them? Well, first of all, I mean, this is too serious of a question to be throwing hypotheticals out there, okay? Hamas doesn't have Auschwitz-style ovens going on. They're not burning Jews. As a matter of fact, like, to one Jew soldier that's getting killed, there's like a couple hundred Palestinian civilians being murdered. You understand? And it's very, like, the actual civilians of actual Jewish civilians is, like, very, very low. Very, very low. So, I mean, like, just to throw that out there is to try to put you in that mind frame of the Holocaust, the Holocaust. Oh, they want you to think, the Holocaust, to put you in that, because that's already been accepted as like the world evil. And I mean, obviously, it was a terrible thing, the Holocaust, but that's not the point. The point is that what's going on right now is not a Holocaust that Palestine has launched on Israel. The official goal of Hamas are the same as the Nazis: to kill every Jew. The Hamas charter says so 12 times. And yet the world demands Israel army stand down. This month, Hamas confirmed yet again that every Jew in Israel, man, woman, or child, is a target for their terrorism. The Hamas chant, "From the river to the sea," is shorthand for eliminating every single Jew from all of Israel, as in from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea. Not just from the disrupted West Bank, but from everywhere in Israel. Just as Hamas does not distinguish between civilians and soldiers, it does not distinguish between different proposed peace maps. They want all Jews dead. Well, there's something I want to say real quick about, the civilian thing. Okay, first of all, I mean, Hamas, to have a straight out war against Israel would be absolutely retarded, because they actually don't even have an official army, and Israel has a kick-ass army, so that America pretty much supplied, bought, and paid for. So I mean, to put on uniforms and sit out in the middle of a field and battle one by one like the old school style is just absolutely stupid. It would never happen. They're going to do a guerrilla style hit and run, urban combat. And the space that they're squeezed into is so small that it's impossible not to be spread out through civilians. Now, I'm not saying that, I'm not saying that human shields aren't used, because they definitely are. But what I'm saying is, in a situation that they're in, it's impossible not to use the human shields. I mean, I'm sure a lot of these guys use it to their advantage, but it's almost impossible not to. So you really can't decipher between the two. It's such a tight little area. And, they're not going to put themselves all in one spot with a big flag that says, "Hey, we're right here." Not against an army that's got like the equipment to just push a button and just evaporate that area. So of course they're going to be spread out, and they're going to be camouflaged with the people, and they're going to use that to the best of their advantage, because that's one of the only tools they have to fight against Israel. So destroying the sole Jewish state is a different goal from creating a Palestinian state, which would be the 23rd Arab country. In 2005, Israel gave Palestinians at least part of the state, the Gaza Strip. Now, that part always kills me when they say, we gave them, they go, "Oh, well, we gave them the Gaza Strip, or we gave them the West Bank." What do you mean you gave them? That was all theirs. Before 1948, that was all theirs. I mean, I don't understand that. Like, I mean, it's almost like they've erased the history, and the people have forgotten that all of that country all belonged to Palestine at one time. That was all Palestine. It's like people sit there and they go, "Oh, well, they let them have this and they let them have that." What do you mean they let them have that? That was all theirs to begin with. And then you're going to say, like, oh, like as if it, like, "Oh, we're going to let you guys have less than 10% of your land," as if it's a gift. Israel forcibly removed every Jew who lived there and handed the place over to the Palestinians. Israel even gifted 3,000 greenhouses that were owned by the Jews who used to live there as a ready-made industry. Now, I don't know if they gifted it to them. I think they were getting their asses kicked in a certain spot and they pulled out and they just left it behind. Don't really know for sure, but it's unlikely that Gaza could have become an Arab Hong Kong. But stranger things have happened, as the city of Dubai shows. But instead of setting to work building Gaza as a prosperous or at least peaceful mini-state, the Palestinians chose Sharia law and terrorist government that has fired thousands of rockets at Israel from amongst Gaza's houses and schools. Now, as for this terrorist government, Hamas is an actual organization, and I would agree that a lot of the acts that they have done are terrorist acts, but they're not a terrorist organization, not like Al Qaeda or whatever it is. You know what I mean? And the thing is, they had the PLO for the longest time with what's his name there, Arafat or whatever, and I think it was like the Oslo Agreement. There was an agreement made, and a lot of people, they weren't really happy with, they believed that Arafat gave way too much, and and then America and Israel, basically, they wanted more, and he kept fighting about that. Like, he already gave 80% of the power up, and they wanted like 100%, and he was fighting against that. And then over time, like, the people kind of got fed up with it, and Hamas was like, in the streets, like helping, taking care of the people of Gaza. And the people of Gaza felt that, like, the PLO was taking care of more of the people in the West Bank, and they felt like the PLO kind of like dissed them, like gave them kind of a bit of the backside. So, they ignorantly, it's like back in the Depression days when people voted for the Nazi Party. It was like, here's these guys feeding us with soup and bread, So they did. They voted for Hamas because they thought Hamas was going to actually give them more than what PLO was giving them. Like, all their borders were still being closed. They still weren't getting, like, the daily essentials. They still needed aid from United Nations. Like, they wanted to break free from that. So, where am I here? The concentration camp ovens question is not hyperbole. Hamas has fired thousands of rockets at Israel. Some are unsophisticated mortars, but others are genuine military weapons imported from Iran. It is miraculous that so few of these missiles have killed Jews. Israel has deployed an anti-missile defense system called Iron Dome that has shot down 90% of rockets that were on course to hit populated areas. Missing out something here. Israel didn't create the Iron Dome. America created the Iron Dome. America paid for the Iron Dome. Like, if it wasn't for America, Israel wouldn't have none of the shit that they have now. And it's obvious that, the main objective towards that is, you have your junior partner, your police state in the Middle East that will look after all of your energy sector interests. I mean, they want a powerhouse army in the Middle East. And it's pretty obvious that that's the main objective. Now, a lot of people may believe that there's a religious angle to it too, and I'm sure that's possible, but and it probably is very possible, about the whole, like, in the Bible it says that, when Jesus comes back, Israel's gonna have the land and all that bullshit, or whatever it is, I'm not really too big into that. I kind of think it's just more greed than anything. But there is some religious nuts that do support the idea of, Israel having control of that land because it's a biblical thing and whatever. But I just think it's mostly about greed for the people that actually matter, the heavy hitters that are making these things happen. But there is no Iron Dome system that can defeat underground tunnels. Hamas has spent millions of dollars and diverted countless resources donated to Gaza to build homes, schools, and hospitals. To a network of underground attack paths to Israel. There are not tunnels dug with a shovel. They are massive underground engineering projects, some 70 feet deep, made with steel reinforced concrete, going hundreds of feet past the Gaza-Israel border towards Israeli towns. Their purpose is obvious: provide secret entrances through which terrorists can emerge. Well, I won't deny that obviously it's used for terrorist intentions, but what they're leaving out, okay, is that a lot of these tunnels are built so they can get resources in and out. And they make the tunnels big enough that they can fit cars and everything because they're trying to get stuff that the normal world has. But they're being squeezed in like a prison. They're trapped from every angle. And they can't get the stuff that they need to live. And it's just that the area is getting squeezed tighter and tighter, smaller and smaller. So this is the smuggling game. This is what you do to get the shit that you need. Now, is it also convenient for terrorist soldiers? Sure it is. But I bet you 10 to 1 that most of the intentions are for smuggling resources that are needed back and forth. Only through its ground invasion of Gaza did Israel discover these tunnels. They always knew the tunnels were there. And terrifying paraphernalia in them, including counterfeit Israeli military uniforms, handcuffs, and tranquilizers, captured Hamas terrorists confirmed the purpose: sneak attacks on Israeli towns timed for this fall. These tunnels were revealed before Barack Obama demanded Israel ceasefire against Hamas. So the question again, if Hamas were to be caught building in Auschwitz, would the world still tell Israel to go quietly to the slaughter? And the answer again, of course. I'm sorry, Ezra, but you're an idiot. I'm not going to go off like I did on Thane Rosenbaum's article, but, this is supposed to be objective journalism here, guys. We're supposed to be Canada. We're supposed to be the country that's fair and this and that. And it's not fair. That's not objective journalism. That's bias. That is complete biased journalism. If anyone can't see that, if anyone can't see the indoctrination, the brainwash behind that, then I gotta question where your head's at. New York Times today. So they're talking about the UN and this and that, and I like the New York Times, and I think it's the best newspaper out there, and I do like, it's great journalism, but I mean you can see where there's a lot of like implemented strategic things being put, and I don't think it's the actual journalist's fault. It's the people that own the company and stuff, right? I mean, everybody's owned by somebody, especially in America, But there's this huge ad in there, right? And it's: peace in the Middle East can only be achieved with a strong Israel. I love America. It's my home, and it's where I was born. But I have a special place in my heart for Israel. And after you read this, I hope you will too. For one memorable year I lived in Israel and have visited many times since. While there I attended Hebrew University of Jerusalem. As an American of Jewish faith, I wanted nothing more than to help make peace between the Israelis and the Palestinians. The dreams of a young man. On my frequent visits to Jerusalem Old City, I sat with Arab shopkeepers to listen and learn about their point of view. Many wanted the same thing the Jewish people wanted: a peaceful coexistence and the opportunity to make a better life for their families. I grew to love Israel, all its people, the rich history and culture. At the crossroads of the world's three great religions, Israel is the only place where Jews, Christians, and Muslims are free to live and worship along the footsteps of their origins. It truly is the Holy Land. Between 1993 and 95, during the Oslo Accords, I was overjoyed when an agreement was signed by Shimon Peres, and Yitzhak Rabin with PLO chairman Yasser Arafat. The PLO recognized Israel's right to exist. For its part, Israel took the risk of granting a decree of autonomy to the Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza until the details of the final peace agreement could be reached. Shockingly, Hamas terrorists derailed the peace process by unleashing a horrific, multi-year suicide bombing campaign that took the lives of countless innocent Israeli men, women, and children. In 2005, in order to further the prospects of peace, Prime Minister Ariel Sharon evacuated all Israeli settlements and withdrew the remaining Israeli soldiers from Gaza. Previously, Arafat agreed to specific limits in the scope of the weapons that Palestinians could have in Gaza and to restrict their use to the Palestinian police force. Hamas would soon violate this agreement. After taking control of Gaza in 2007, Hamas militants began regularly launching rockets filled with explosive hate at Israeli citizens. They indiscriminately fired at Israeli population centers in a cold-blooded campaign of violence. Hamas' recent barrage of longer-range Iranian missiles. Notice how they gotta throw in these specific words, Iranian missiles, has forced two-thirds of the Israeli people to use bomb shelters. Unfortunately, terrorism is Hamas's governing philosophy. It is shameful and sad. Israel wants the same thing as every other nation, a piece of land to call home. It has the right to take strong and decisive action to root out terrorism, and the moral obligation to protect its people. There is no country in the world that would not want to demilitarize the forces that are indiscriminately targeting its civilian population. Israel wants the same thing as every other nation, a piece of land to call home. You were given a piece of land. When the partition agreement was made, you were given the bigger portion of land, the better portion of land. And it still wasn't enough. Now you've got 90% of the land, and it's still not enough. It's fair to say that you don't want a piece of the land anymore, Israel. You want it all. You want it all. Why can't you just say that? The people know it. The people know it. You want it all. And it's simple. You want all the land. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure that out. Bottom line is, Hamas does not want a quiet for quiet deal like 2009 and 2012. They've settled for these deals before, and they were told, they have all these restrictions and this and that, and they can't do anything. They can't live. The people, they're multiplying. The population's getting bigger and bigger, and their land is shrinking more and more. Okay. They want, the border crossing, the blockades. They want it all lifted. They want to be able to import, export. They want their fishing and farming restrictions lifted. They can't even get cement, like building materials. All of their building materials to rebuild all the shit that keeps getting smashed down and blown up. They can't get it because Israel has got them surrounded, land, sea, and air. They've got them trapped, and they won't let them get any building materials. They're like, no, you're going to use rockets with it. So they can't even rebuild the stuff that's already flattened down. It's pretty obvious that you've created, you've blown up their water management plants, you've blown up their nuclear plants. You're trapping them in a tight space, and you just want them to kill each other and starve to death, die of thirst. You're basically creating a little apocalypse, like a science experiment. You're just watching them just fade away, and that's what seems to be the plan to me. Now, I've got maps here I got it on my Kobo, and it's, it's pretty ghetto. You're not going to be able to see it very well, but it will give you a pretty good understanding. So to your so to your left, okay. So on this side here, this was the original land plot, okay, and that was 47. Then the next one is after the partition plan in 47, and then the next picture beside it is 49 to 67, and then how it is to the present. So if you look, okay, if you look right there, okay, if you look in the north, the white space, that was the settlements, and all the dark was Palestinian land. Then the next one over, there was a partition where most of the land, I mean, it was uneven, even though there was more Palestinians than there was Israelis. And then it shrunk. And then the last one here, look, there's hardly any. The West Bank is shrinking. It's just a few dots. And the Gaza Strip is just really, really small. I mean, they started off with 95% of the land when settlers first came in. Now they've got probably about 7% of the land left. I mean, you be the judge. Yeah, Hamas is carrying a lot of terrorist acts. There's no doubt about that. But I don't think they're creating not close to as many terrorist acts that are being done to them. So, I mean, you decide. Is Israel really defending itself? I don't know about that. Anyways, that's the segment of Uneducated Philosopher. Thank you for your time. Have a good night.